Hello there, and welcome to the weekly Outside Views magazine on German politics. Less sparkling wine, more red cabbage. The Federal Statistical Office has put together facts about the festival and thus captured the zeitgeist a little bit. For example, the area under cultivation for domestic Christmas trees grew by 26.4% last year. In 2021, Christmas trees were grown outside the forest on an area of 20,100 hectares in 3,350 farms. There were also 2.4 million imported trees, that's 13% more than in the previous year, as the statisticians reported on Tuesday. As in previous years, most of the imported trees came from Denmark. So, greetings to Denmark from here. In 2021, almost 142,000 tons of red cabbage were harvested in Germany. According to statistics, that was 13.6% more than in the previous year, and 2.64 million liters of sparkling wine were sold. Per capita consumption has fallen steadily in recent years, as the figures show, by 23% within 10 years. In 2011, every person in Germany aged 16 and over drank an average of 6.5 bottles per year. In 2021, it was just under 5 bottles. As repeatedly threatened, Bavaria is suing against the structure of the inheritance tax. The cabinet decided that on Tuesday in Nuremberg. An application will be made to the Federal Constitutional Court for an abstract review of the relevant provisions of the Inheritance Tax Act, it said. This should open the way for an urgently needed increase in tax allowances and a regionalization of inheritance tax. Prime Minister Markus Söder emphasized, "We consider it a great unfairness that Bavarian properties are ultimately treated in the same way in the value classification as properties in other parts of Germany where the prices are not comparable." The state government complained that an increase in regionalization of the allowances by political or legislative means had failed until the end because of the federal government and other federal states. On Friday, Bavaria failed in the Bundesrat, that's the Federal Council, with an application to call the mediation committee of the Bundestag and the Bundesrat over this point of contention. Rather, the regional chamber approved the annual tax law with extensive tax changes. The background is an adjustment in the valuation of real estate. As a result, heirs to larger assets could face higher costs from January 1st. Bavaria's finance minister Albert Füracker had therefore warned against tax increases through the back door. Federal President Frank-Walter Steinmeier has asked Chinese President Xi Jinping to persuade Kremlin boss Vladimir Putin to end the Ukraine war. In a phone call that lasted around an hour, Steinmeier underlined the common interest of China and Europe in an end to the war and in respect for Ukrainian sovereignty and the withdrawal of Russian troops. That's what the office of the federal president announced on Monday in Berlin. He asked Xi to use his influence on Russia and influence Putin in this sense, they said. The reason for the call was the establishment of bilateral relations between the Federal Republic of Germany and the People's Republic of China 50 years ago. In addition to bilateral relations and the current corona situation in China, the focus was on the Russian war of aggression in Ukraine. President Xi and I honored 5 decades of bilateral relations and exchanged detailed and constructive views on current challenges, is what Steinmeier said after the call. According to the office of the federal president, during the conversation, he reaffirmed Germany's determination to continue to support Ukraine. Europe will not back down from Russian threats and has taken precautions against the energy crisis. The defense of Ukraine and the cohesion of Europe have been strengthened by the Russian aggression. Putin has fundamentally miscalculated here. Steinmeier also thanked Xi for Russia's clear rejection of nuclear threats. The liberal FDP keeps up its pressure on the coalition partners Social Democrats and Greens for a lifetime extension of the German nuclear power plants. The FDP is still available to extend the service life of the 3 remaining nuclear power plants beyond April 2023. It was Secretary General Bijan Dir Saray told the German press agency on Tuesday in Berlin. In addition to the development of electricity prices, his party is concerned that CO2 emissions are not falling quickly enough because too much coal has to be burned. We want our country to have an energy supply that is clean, safe, and affordable, emphasized Diosaray. According to him, the fact that millions of people were worried about their electricity bills this winter should be reason enough to reconsider tactical party positions. Otherwise, we see the economics minister as having a duty to explain to people how he intends to replace the amounts of electricity that will be lost as a result of the phase out. We would like to see a concept for this by the turn of the year, he said. Actually, the 3 remaining nuclear power plants should have gone offline on December 31st. Because of the energy crisis as a result of the Ukraine war, their duration was extended to April 15th. The Greens in particular are reluctant to continue operations beyond this date. They consider the permanent use of nuclear power to be irresponsible, partly because of the long-term unclear handling of radioactive nuclear waste and potential dangers from technical breakdowns, attacks, and cyber attacks with incalculable consequences. The share of green electricity in electricity consumption in Germany has risen to a record this year. It was 47% after 42% in the previous year, as the Federal Association of Energy and Water Management, the BDEW, announced on Tuesday in Berlin. At the same time, however, the share of lignite and hard coal also increased from 28.3% to 31.9%. The reason is the return of coal-fired power plants to the electricity market in order to save gas. In addition, nuclear power plants will be decommissioned in April, as I said earlier in the video. As a result, according to provisional BDEW calculations, CO2 emissions from the energy industry have risen slightly for the first time in many years instead of falling. Of course, this development is a step backward for the climate, said Kerstin André, chair of the BDEW executive board. We must therefore do everything we can to get back on track as quickly as possible. We need more speed in the expansion of renewable energies, in the expansion and conversion of the grids, in the development of a hydrogen market, she said. According to BDEW figures, natural gas consumption in Germany fell by 14.8% last year compared to the previous year. The reason is the milder weather and savings due to the sharp rise in prices. Further efforts are necessary, said André. The share of Russian gas supplies fell to 20% this year after 55% last year. Federal Health Minister Karl Lauterbach wants to improve the supply of children's medicines by having health insurance companies pay more for such medicines. We have to remove these medicines for children from the fixed prices so that they can also be sold at higher prices. I will react today by instructing the health insurance companies to pay 50% more than this fixed price, said the SPD politician on Tuesday morning on German television. Lauterbach explained that patent-protected drugs tend to be expensive in Germany. For medicines without patent protection, however, low unit prices are usually paid, the so-called fixed prices. Germany is not an attractive market for manufacturers, which means that products that are in high demand are more likely to be sold in other countries, such as the Netherlands. The prices have to be raised immediately. We are doing that with today's effect, Lauterbach said. There is also the problem that certain drugs, such as cancer drugs or antibiotics, are not sufficiently manufactured. We will now give the health insurance companies the requirement that they procure some of the medicines from China, India, and overseas, but also some from Europe, he said. This should lead to production in Europe being ramped up again. Regarding the financing of his proposals, he said, "We will discuss this in the departmental vote. I'm firmly convinced that everyone here understands that we have to act." He's pulling in the same direction with Finance Minister Christian Lindner from the Liberals, he says. International election observers will keep an eye on the repeat of the Berlin House of Representatives elections on February 12th. State Returning Officer Stefan Bröchler announced on Tuesday that the Congress of Local and Regional Authorities of the Council of Europe had already agreed to send observers. Interior Senator Iris Spranger from the Social Democrats also invited observers from the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. However, there is still no response from the OSCE. According to a ruling by the Berlin Constitutional Court, the September 2021 election must be repeated due to numerous mishaps. Bröchler said that Berlin had lost trust, but could now show that we have learned from mistakes and will regain trust in democracy. In Germany, after EU sanctions because of the Ukraine war, 5,046 billion euros in Russian assets have so far been frozen. The number was given by the federal government in response to a request from left-wing MP Christian Görke. And this was initially reported by T-Online. And the answer is also available at the German press agency. According to this, 2.217 billion euros of the frozen values are accounted for by funds reported to the Bundesbank by German banks. In addition, there would be movable assets worth 1.099 billion euros. The government did not provide any further details. In June, they spoke of 4.48 billion euros in frozen Russian assets. The left MP Görke criticized that the decision to enforce the asset freeze notification obligation was a flop. Oligarchs hadn't reported anything for several months, said Görke. Those affected know that investigators in Germany are groping in the dark, partly because land registers are not digitized and authorities lack staff. It's long overdue to tighten the oligarch sanctions to hit those who profit from Putin's power circle, said Görke. On the other hand, two members of the Left Party have applied for Bodo Ramelow's expulsion from the party. The reason is his attitude to the war in Ukraine. This was reported by the news magazine Der Spiegel on Tuesday. Accordingly, a corresponding request from two party members from Saxony was received by the Arbitration Commission of the Left in Thuringia. According to Spiegel, it states that the applicants have now completely abandoned their belief in Comrade Ramelow. Almost a month ago, the Thuringian Prime Minister spoke out in favor of arms deliveries to Ukraine in an interview, thereby opposing the official line of the Left Party. Anyone who is attacked has the right to defend themselves, is what Ramelow said at the time. According to the report, the two comrades from Saxony are now accusing him of this. Ramelow should be excluded from the Left Party in particular because he divides it even more with his appearance and endangers its existence. In addition, Ramelow's attitude repeatedly ignores Russian interests and increases the risk of mankind being destroyed in a nuclear war. And Ramelow accepts this. According to Spiegel, Ramelow himself said calmly, "This is an option for more clarity and knowledge within the party." Although he does not understand what exactly the two comrades are accusing him of, he suspects that they probably consider the Russian war of aggression to be legitimate, which in no way corresponds to the party line. Ramelow can comment on the application for exclusion until mid-January. The arbitration committee must then decide whether to open a procedure. In what is described as a turning point in international cultural policy, Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock and Minister of State for Culture Claudia Roth returned 20 valuable Benin bronzes to the African country in the Nigerian capital Abuja on Tuesday. For a long time, the works of art stolen in colonial times belonged to the collections of museums in Berlin, Hamburg, Cologne, Stuttgart, and Dresden-Leipzig. The leaders of several museums accompanied the Green politicians at the ceremony in Nigeria. The return shows the willingness to critically evaluate one's own actions with an sympathetic ear to the concerns of those who were victims of colonial atrocities, said Baerbock during the ceremony. This is particularly important for the people in Nigeria because it's not just a piece of art, not just a cultural heritage, but also a piece of identity. Nigeria's request for return has long been ignored. This is now a first step. There are many, many bronzes that have been stolen. That's why many bronzes will come back, said Baerbock. More than 1,100 of the works from the palace of the former Kingdom of Benin, which today belongs to Nigeria, have been on display in around 20 German museums. The objects, which are made of ivory and other materials in addition to bronze, come largely from British looting in 1897. Defense Minister Christine Lambrecht, oh my god, has called on the industry to quickly repair the breakdowns in the Puma infantry fighting vehicle and otherwise threatened to decommission the combat vehicle. On German television, she said, "We can't always swing from one repair to the other. We need reliable solutions or the decision to no longer rely on the Puma. The repair of the infantry fighting vehicle must be done very quickly. I don't expect commitments within many weeks, but within a few," she said. Over the weekend, it became known that all 18 of the tanks used during a firing exercise by the Bundeswehr for participation in the NATO intervention force VJTF had failed. The Puma, plagued by many technical problems, was only declared combat ready in 2021. The combat vehicle developed and produced by Krauss Maffei Wegmann KMW and Rheinmetall Landsysteme GmbH or RLS had previously made headlines as a breakdown tank. The minister explained that promising results had actually been achieved with the Puma in recent years and in various exercises. So I think it's worth the effort to consult with the industry to see if there can be any kind of reliability. In terms of reliability, she expects that a solution will be agreed upon in a few weeks. Otherwise, I can't take responsibility. Otherwise, we'd have to invest in retrofitting. We won't sign these contracts and there won't be a second batch that means further orders. The industry has a duty, said Lambrecht. We will walk this path together or break it off if need be. But she forgets one thing there. First of all, the current problems we are having with not only with the Puma but the Panzerhaubitze 2000 are known since April, and she's acting now. You can count the months yourself. So once again, she's proving to be the worst defense minister Germany had in, I don't know, since 1945. And secondly, it's the whole procurement in this ministry, and it doesn't matter which minister was there with what party color. This procurement in this ministry is absolutely crap, to say it in a proper word here. There have to be changes, and that fast. And because a lot of these problems are caused by the procurement system. If you need far too long to get replacement parts for anything, and if you have your ministry and your Bundeswehr not made able to do all the maintenance that needs to be on high-tech military stuff, then of course the stuff will break down. And so it's a lot of house-made problems there. I'm not being paid by any company selling arms to Germany or whatsoever. Even if I'm on my military channel, I talk a lot about certain vehicles, and I will for a long time in the future. None of them has paid me a cent for this, for saying what I'm saying now, or they haven't paid me a cent at all for anything, just to make that clear. I don't blame the companies here. They might... The German procurement system is the problem, and this minister is the problem. But let's leave it with news for today, then with the rest of it. That concludes today's magazine, but there will be another tomorrow, of course. So I'll see you in my next video. I'll be back.